The Battle of Saul began at exactly 1400 hours Earth time, when Admiral Morrison gave the order that would change galactic history forever. 7,000 human warships opened fire simultaneously on the Council enforcement fleet in a coordinated attack that demonstrated centuries of military evolution applied to space warfare. The first salvo destroyed 60 alien vessels before their crews could react to the impossible situation. Council ships had been designed for patrol duties and intimidation, displays against primitive civilizations. Their weapons were meant to terrorize defenseless worlds into submission. Their defenses were adequate for fighting other Council vessels in rare territorial disputes. They were completely unprepared for human weapons that had been reverse-engineered from captured alien technology and improved with innovations that reflected humanity's talent for warfare. Captain Nicole Barnes commanded the USS Vengeance as her heavy cruiser engaged a Council battleship that was 3 times her size. The alien vessel carried enough firepower to reduce continents to ash, but its weapons had been built for orbital bombardment rather than ship-to-ship combat. Human designers had studied every aspect of Council military doctrine and created vessels specifically designed to exploit their weaknesses. Target their main reactor housing, Barnes ordered her weapons officer. Human intelligence indicates that Council ships have vulnerable power coupling systems that were never upgraded for combat stress. The Vengeance fired its main guns in a pattern that concentrated devastating energy on specific weak points. Council ship design prioritized impressive appearance over military effectiveness. Their hulls were thick but poorly distributed. Their weapons were powerful but slow to retarget. Their crews were trained for garrison duty rather than desperate combat against an enemy that fought with nothing to lose. Across the solar system, human ships executed battle plans that had been refined through months of simulation and training. Each vessel knew its assigned targets and tactical role. Fighter squadrons swarmed Council ships like angry insects, their small size and overwhelming numbers making effective defense impossible. Heavy cruisers engaged in direct combat with alien capital ships using weapons that could crack moons. Destroyers formed hunting packs that pursued damaged enemies and prevented their escape. Lieutenant Brad Cooper managed the tactical display aboard the Vengeance as the battle developed around them. His screens showed a 3-dimensional chess game played with starships and measured in megatons of firepower. Human forces were winning through superior coordination and weapons designed specifically for this conflict. Every advantage that the Council had enjoyed for millennia was being systematically destroyed. Council reinforcements jumping in from hyperspace, Cooper reported as new contacts appeared on his sensors. 37 additional vessels, including at least 6 heavy battleships. They are moving to engage our forward squadrons. Barnes smiled grimly at the news. Human intelligence had predicted reinforcement attempts and prepared countermeasures that would demonstrate the true scope of Earth's military preparation. The Council was about to discover that the fleet they had already engaged was only a fraction of humanity's total strength. Signal Admiral Morrison, Barnes ordered. Request permission to deploy reserve squadrons as planned. The response came within seconds. Morrison had been waiting for this exact moment to deliver the psychological blow that would break Council morale completely. Earth's hidden reserves would show the aliens that resistance was not only futile but had been anticipated and prepared for in advance. Another 2,000 human ships dropped out of hyperspace in perfect formation around the Council reinforcements. Their emergence was timed to cut off alien retreat routes and demonstrate that humanity possessed faster-than-light travel capabilities that exceeded Council technology. The reserve fleet had been positioned in nearby star systems and could reach Sol within minutes of receiving orders. Enforcer Zuthkar watched his tactical displays with growing horror as the human trap closed around his forces. What had begun as a routine occupation mission had become a disaster that threatened to destroy the entire enforcement fleet. His ships were being systematically eliminated by an enemy that seemed to anticipate every move and counter every strategy. "Sir, we have lost over 60% of our vessels," his communications officer reported with barely controlled panic. "Our weapons are having minimal effect on human ship defenses. Their targeting systems appear to be exploiting weaknesses in our hull design that we did not know existed." The enforcer realized that the Council had made a fundamental error in their assessment of human capabilities. This species had not developed advanced technology through gradual scientific progress. They had reverse-engineered captured Council equipment and improved it with innovations born from centuries of warfare among themselves. Human ships carried weapons that combined alien science with military doctrine that the Council had never encountered. Dr. Alex Hayes monitored the battle from his command center on Luna and felt grim satisfaction as his designs proved their worth in actual combat. Every human weapon system had been tested against captured Council technology. Every defensive measure had been designed to counter specific alien capabilities. The fleet performing so magnificently in the void represented the culmination of human military engineering applied to technologies that surpassed anything the galaxy had seen. Admiral Morrison, our casualty reports are minimal, Hayes reported during a brief communication window. We have lost 18 vessels with another 43 reporting various degrees of damage. Enemy losses are approaching total annihilation of their original force. The numbers told the story of a battle that would be studied by military historians for centuries. Human ships moved with coordination that reflected thousands of years of naval tradition adapted for three-dimensional space combat. Their weapons struck with devastating accuracy that turned Council vessels into expanding clouds of debris. Their defenses absorbed alien firepower that had been designed to crack planetary defenses. Council crews that had served for decades without experiencing serious combat found themselves facing an enemy that had been preparing for this specific conflict since the first alien ultimatum arrived. Human training programs had simulated every aspect of the battle using data gathered from captured Council technology. Earth's military leaders had studied their enemies' strengths and weaknesses with the intensity of a species fighting for survival. The turning point came when human boarding parties began capturing damaged Council vessels instead of destroying them. Elite Marines trained in zero-gravity combat overwhelmed alien crews that had never faced determined resistance. The prisoners were treated according to Geneva Convention standards that were completely unknown to Council military doctrine. Human soldiers provided medical care to wounded enemies and protected captured personnel from harm. This demonstration of mercy in the midst of devastating military victory shocked Council forces more than any weapon could have achieved. Their propaganda had portrayed humans as savage primitives who would torture and kill captured enemies. Instead, they encountered soldiers who fought with lethal efficiency, but treated prisoners with respect that violated every assumption about human nature. As the 6-hour battle neared its conclusion, the tactical situation had become completely hopeless for surviving Council forces. Human ships surrounded the remaining alien vessels in formations that made escape impossible. The enforcement fleet that had arrived to accept Earth's surrender now faced complete annihilation or unconditional surrender to an enemy they had dismissed as primitive. Admiral Morrison broadcast the final ultimatum to remaining Council ships with the same calm authority that had characterized human communications throughout the conflict. His words carried the promise of mercy for those who surrendered and certain death for those who continued fighting a battle that had already been decided. "Attention, Council vessels," Morrison announced. "You have fought with honor according to your understanding of warfare. Your continued resistance serves no purpose except to waste the lives of your crews. Surrender now and you will be treated as prisoners of war with all appropriate protections. Continue fighting and you will share the fate of your command ship." The last Council vessel powered down its weapons and activated emergency beacons that requested humanitarian assistance. The Battle of Sol was over, but its consequences would reshape the entire galaxy as news of humanity's victory spread to every world under Council control. Earth had not simply survived the ultimate test of military strength. Humanity had announced their arrival as the new dominant power among the stars. The Council's deadline arrived with their enforcement fleet emerging from hyperspace at the edge of the solar system. 300 vessels that had never faced serious resistance appeared in perfect formation around Earth's outer planets. Enforcer Zethkar commanded the largest military force ever sent to subdue a single world. His ships carried enough firepower to sterilize entire continents and reduce cities to radioactive dust. Zethkar studied his tactical displays with the confidence of a commander who had conquered dozens of worlds. The human planet appeared exactly as his intelligence reports had predicted. Normal radio traffic continued at typical levels. Orbital installations showed no military upgrades or defensive preparations. The species seemed to have accepted their fate and were preparing for peaceful occupation. Beginning final approach to the third planet, Zethkar announced to his fleet commanders and the council chambers on distant Nexus Prime. Resistance appears minimal based on all sensor readings. The humans have apparently realized the futility of opposing council authority. We should complete occupation procedures within days. The enforcement. Fleet moved deeper into the solar system in the standard intimidation formation that had terrified countless species into immediate surrender. Council ships were designed to inspire awe and terror in primitive civilizations. Their massive hulls and obvious weapon arrays usually ended conflicts before they could begin. Most species transmitted surrender terms within hours of seeing such overwhelming force. Admiral Jake Morrison watched the alien approach from his command center deep beneath NORAD Mountain. His screens showed the enemy fleet advancing toward Earth with casual arrogance. The council ships moved in loose formations that assumed no serious opposition. Their commanders were about to receive an education in human military doctrine that would reshape their understanding of warfare. Signal all fleet commanders, Morrison ordered with deadly calm. Prepare for simultaneous stealth field deactivation on my mark. Remember, we get one chance to achieve complete tactical surprise. Make it count. Throughout the solar system, human crews made final preparations for the moment that would change galactic history. 7,000 warships waited in perfect concealment, using stealth technology that rendered them invisible to council sensors. Each vessel carried weapons and defenses that represented the pinnacle of human military engineering. The fleet was positioned to surround and overwhelm the enemy force in a coordinated attack that would leave no survivors. Captain Nicole Barnes commanded the USS Vengeance from her position near Jupiter. Her ship was one of 50 heavy cruisers designed specifically to engage Council capital vessels in direct combat. The Vengeance carried enough firepower to destroy cities and armor, thick enough to withstand orbital bombardment. Barnes and her crew had trained for this moment for over a year. All stations report ready, her tactical officer announced. Weapons charged and targeting solutions locked. We have clear firing lanes on multiple enemy vessels. Similar reports came from human ships throughout the solar system. Destroyers positioned near asteroid fields prepared to hunt down fleeing enemies. Fighter carriers readied their squadrons for rapid deployment. Support vessels stood by to coordinate the massive fleet action that would determine humanity's survival. Every commander understood that failure meant the extinction of their species. The Council fleet continued its advance toward Earth without detecting the trap being prepared around them. Zethkar reviewed final occupation procedures with his staff. His ships would establish orbital control while ground forces prepared for planetary landing. The humans would be given one final opportunity to surrender before military action became necessary. Enforcer, we are detecting some unusual energy readings from the asteroid belt, his sensor operator reported with mild concern. The signatures are consistent with industrial operations, but the power levels seem higher than expected for primitive mining equipment. Zethkar dismissed the report without serious consideration. Human technology was decades behind Council standards. Whatever industrial processes they were operating could not possibly threaten military vessels that had conquered star systems. His attention remained focused on the main prize of Earth itself. Then space around the planet began to shimmer with impossible light. Stealth fields deactivated in perfect synchronization as Admiral Morrison gave the order that unleashed humanity's secret weapon. 7,000 human warships materialized from seemingly empty vacuum in positions that surrounded the Council fleet completely. The largest military force in galactic history revealed itself in a display of power that stunned alien sensors. The human vessels were unlike anything in Council databases. Their hulls bristled with weapon systems that violated several galactic treaties on military technology. Their formations showed coordination and tactical doctrine that spoke of thousands of years of warfare evolution. Each ship looked like it had been built for one purpose: the complete destruction of any enemy foolish enough to threaten Earth. Zethkar stared at his tactical displays in shock that bordered on disbelief. His sensors showed human ships in impossible numbers using technologies that his species considered theoretical. The primitive world that should have surrendered without resistance had somehow built a fleet that outnumbered his forces by more than 20-1. This cannot be accurate, he stammered to his bridge crew. Run full sensor sweeps. Check for electronic warfare or deception devices. These readings are impossible for such a primitive species. His tactical officers confirmed the readings with growing panic in their voices. The human ships were real and they were armed with weapons that exceeded Council military specifications. Energy signatures indicated power plants that should have been beyond human engineering capability. The fleet that surrounded them represented a level of military preparation that no Council intelligence had predicted. Admiral Morrison's voice broadcast across all Council communication frequencies with the calm authority of a commander who held every advantage. His words carried the weight of human history and the promise of galactic change that would reshape the balance of power among the stars. "You came to our system uninvited," Morrison announced to the alien fleet and the Council chambers that were monitoring their communications. "You threatened our species with extinction. You assumed we would submit like all the others who came before us. You were fundamentally and completely wrong." The human fleet moved into attack positions with precision that demonstrated advanced tactical coordination. Each ship knew its role in the coming battle. Fighter squadrons launched from carrier vessels in clouds that darkened space. Heavy cruisers aligned their main guns with Council capital ships. Destroyers formed hunting packs that could pursue fleeing enemies throughout the solar system. "This is Enforcer Zethkar of the Galactic Council," came the panicked transmission from the alien commander. "Your display of military force is impressive for a primitive species, but you cannot hope to achieve victory against the full might of the Council. Surrender now and your deaths will be swift." Morrison's response carried the quiet confidence of a species that had survived ice ages, plagues, and world wars to emerge stronger from every challenge. His words would be remembered by historians as the moment humanity announced its arrival on the galactic stage as a power that would never submit to alien authority. "We are not trying to achieve victory against the Council, Enforcer," Morrison replied with deadly calm. "We are here to replace it entirely." The revelation was complete. Earth had not ignored the Council ultimatum out of ignorance or desperation. Humanity had used the time granted by alien arrogance to prepare the most devastating military response in galactic history. The species that was supposed to surrender without resistance was about to demonstrate why they had conquered their own world, through superior technology and unbreakable determination. The Council enforcement fleet found itself facing an enemy that was prepared, united, and absolutely committed to fighting for their freedom regardless of the cost. Council Enforcer Zethkar studied the latest surveillance reports from the Sol system with growing satisfaction. The human world had gone quiet after receiving the ultimatum. Their aggressive radio transmissions had dropped to normal levels. Orbital scans showed typical agricultural and industrial activity for a primitive civilization. Everything indicated that the species was preparing for inevitable surrender. The Enforcer's aide approached his command chair with another data tablet. The young Council member was eager to prove himself worthy of advancement. He had been monitoring human communications for months and believed he understood their simple psychology. His reports consistently showed a species in decline preparing for peaceful submission. "Commander, our deep space sensors detect minimal military activity in the system," the aide reported with confidence. "Their largest vessels appear to be crude chemical propulsion craft that can barely reach their own natural satellite. There are no signs of advanced weapon construction or fleet assembly. The humans seem to have accepted their situation. What the Council's long-range scanners could not detect were the massive construction projects hidden throughout the outer solar system. Humanity had learned the art of deception through thousands of years of warfare among themselves. They applied those hard-earned lessons on a scale that no galactic civilization had ever attempted. Every asteroid field contained shipyards that appeared to be simple mining operations. Captain Ryan Davis commanded the largest construction facility in the belt between Mars and Jupiter. His crews worked in shifts around the clock building humanity's secret weapon. The USS Defiance was taking shape inside a hollowed-out asteroid that looked like any other space rock to alien sensors. The ship was unlike anything in Council databases because it had been designed by a species that understood war. Human engineering had been born from centuries of conflict and innovation. Every component of their warships reflected lessons learned from naval battles and aerial combat. The Defiance carried enough firepower to destroy a small moon, but it looked like nothing more than industrial equipment to Council observers. Stealth technology developed from military aircraft programs made entire fleets invisible to alien detection methods. Davis received daily reports from similar facilities across the solar system. Each construction site was disguised as asteroid mining or scientific research. Robot workers that appeared to be extracting minerals were actually assembling hull sections and weapon systems. Transport ships that seemed to carry ore between asteroids were moving military components to final assembly points. The scale of human production capacity amazed even the engineers who planned it. Earth had learned mass manufacturing during 2 global wars, when entire populations had been mobilized for military production. Factories that built millions of vehicles could be converted to spacecraft assembly. Assembly lines that produced aircraft could manufacture fighter ships. The same industrial base that fed and equipped billions of people could supply the largest military fleet ever constructed. Admiral Kate Sullivan coordinated the construction efforts from her command post on Luna. The Care, Moon's far side, had been converted into a massive shipyard hidden from Earth-based telescopes. Her engineers worked with materials and technologies that pushed the boundaries of human science. Every ship they built incorporated lessons learned from captured Council probes and alien artifacts. "Admiral, we have completed the first production run," her chief engineer reported during the daily status meeting. 48 vessels are fully operational and ready for testing. The second production line will be online within days. Conservative projections show we can field over 4,000 warships before the Council deadline. Sullivan reviewed the numbers with grim satisfaction. Each ship was designed for a specific purpose in the coming battle. Heavy cruisers would engage Council capital ships in direct combat. Fast destroyers would hunt down fleeing enemy vessels. Carrier ships would deploy fighter squadrons that could overwhelm alien defenses. The fleet would operate as a coordinated force that reflected centuries of human military doctrine. The deception required careful management of every detail that might reach Council sensors. Earth continued broadcasting the same mix of commercial and government communications that had characterized human society for decades. News programs discussed the alien contact with appropriate levels of concern and debate. Political leaders made public statements about diplomatic negotiations and peaceful solutions. Meanwhile, the real work happened in complete silence. Spacecraft moved through the outer system using minimal power and tight beam communications. Construction sites maintained normal thermal signatures that matched legitimate mining operations. Transport schedules followed patterns that looked like commercial cargo hauling. Every aspect of the secret was designed to fool an enemy that considered humans too primitive to be truly dangerous. Dr. Alex Hayes spent his days moving between hidden facilities and testing new technologies. His team had reverse-engineered Council systems to create hybrid designs that combined alien science with human engineering. The results were weapons and defenses that exceeded Council capabilities in ways that would shock their enemies. Human creativity had found improvements that centuries of alien stagnation had missed. The Prometheus project had grown beyond its original scope to encompass the entire military-industrial capacity of human civilization. Every major corporation and government agency contributed resources to the effort. Scientists shared research data across national boundaries. Military officers planned joint operations that ignored traditional rivalries. The threat of extinction had created unity that peacetime had never achieved. Zethkar received his weekly briefings about human activity with growing boredom. The species appeared to be following the same pattern as every other world the Council had contacted. Initial shock and resistance gave way to acceptance and preparation for occupation. Their communication patterns showed the expected levels of fear and resignation. There were no signs of advanced military preparation or technological breakthrough. The Enforcer's biggest concern was maintaining the attention of his crews during the long wait before the deadline. Council ships were designed for patrol duties and intimidation displays. Extended surveillance missions were tedious for warriors who expected quick victories over primitive opponents. Zethkar rotated his squadrons through the system to prevent complacency while maintaining constant observation of human activity. His intelligence specialists assured him that humanity lacked the industrial base for meaningful resistance. Their orbital scans showed factories producing civilian goods and agricultural equipment. Mining operations appeared focused on extracting materials for Earth-based construction projects. There were no signs of the massive resource allocation that would be required for military buildup on a scale that could threaten Council forces. The months passed quietly as both sides prepared for the inevitable confrontation. Council ships maintained their patrol patterns while human construction accelerated toward impossible deadlines. Alien crews grew confident that another species would join their empire without significant bloodshed. Human workers pushed themselves beyond normal limits to build the tools of their survival. By the time Zethkar began his final approach to Earth, humanity had completed the largest military construction project in galactic history. 7,000 warships waited in perfect concealment throughout the solar system. Each vessel carried weapons that could crack asteroids and defenses that could withstand Council firepower. The fleet represented everything humans had learned about war applied to technologies that surpassed their enemies. The deception was complete and total. The Council saw exactly what they expected to see until the moment their sensors detected the impossible. Space around Earth shimmered as stealth fields deactivated in perfect synchronization. The largest armada ever assembled materialized from empty vacuum. Humanity's answer to the ultimatum was written in gun barrels and missile tubes across thousands of deadly ships. The message came from the stars on a Tuesday morning. Admiral Jake Morrison was drinking his third cup of coffee when Colonel Lisa Grant burst into his office at NORAD headquarters. She carried a tablet that showed readings unlike anything they had ever seen before. The radio telescopes around the world had picked up the same transmission at exactly the same moment. It was not random noise from space. It was deliberate, and it was meant for Earth. The translation took 6 hours. Teams of linguists and computer experts worked together to decode the alien language. When they finally understood what the message said, the room fell silent. The Galactic Council had been watching Earth for decades. They knew about human technology and human wars. They knew about nuclear weapons and space programs. They had been waiting for the right moment to make contact. The message was simple and terrifying. Earth had 30 galactic cycles to surrender completely to Council authority. All human governments must dissolve. All military forces must be disbanded. Earth would become a colony world under alien rule. Humans would work in factories and farms to serve the greater galactic empire. There would be no negotiation and no second chances. The Council had spoken to thousands of worlds before Earth. Every single one had submitted without a fight. Morrison read the message again and felt his hands shake with anger. The aliens thought humans were just another weak species that would bow down without resistance. They believed Earth would hand over its freedom because other worlds had done the same thing. They were about to learn how wrong they could be. President Victoria Kane arrived at the mountain base within hours of the translation. She brought with her the leaders of every major nation on Earth. The emergency meeting lasted all night. Military commanders showed satellite photos of alien ships at the edge of the solar system. Scientists presented data about Council technology that was far ahead of human science. Politicians argued about the best response to an impossible situation. The debate continued for 3 days. Some leaders wanted to negotiate. They said humanity should try to find a peaceful solution that would save lives. Others demanded immediate military action. They argued that fighting was better than slavery even if the odds were hopeless. A few suggested hiding the message from the public to prevent panic. Morrison listened to every argument and kept thinking about his own children sleeping safely in their beds. Dr. Alex Hayes joined the discussion on the 4th day. He was the head of a secret project that most of the politicians had never heard of. Hayes had been working on advanced spacecraft designs for 15 years. His team had studied every piece of alien technology that had ever crashed on Earth. They had reverse-engineered propulsion systems and weapon designs that were decades ahead of anything the public knew about. Hayes opened his laptop and showed the room, something that changed everything. Hidden shipyards were already under construction in asteroid fields throughout the solar system. Robot miners had been hollowing out space rocks for months. Automated factories were building hull sections and engine components. The Prometheus project had been preparing for this day since the first alien probe had been detected 5 years ago. The plan was ambitious beyond belief. Earth would pretend to consider surrender, while secretly building the largest military fleet in human history. Every nation would contribute resources and personnel. The best engineers and pilots would work together regardless of nationality. Humanity would have one chance to surprise an enemy that controlled half the galaxy. Morrison explained the strategy to the assembled leaders. The Council expected submission or desperate resistance from a primitive species. They would never anticipate the industrial capacity of a world that had built millions of vehicles and weapons for 2 world wars. Earth could construct ships faster than any alien civilization, because humans had been practicing mass production for over a century. The vote was unanimous. Every nation agreed to the deception. Public announcements would speak of peaceful negotiations and diplomatic solutions. Secret construction would begin immediately in hidden locations across the solar system. The Council would see exactly what they expected to see until it was too late to stop what was coming. Colonel Grant was placed in charge of communications security. Every message to and from Earth would be carefully monitored. The aliens would hear discussions about surrender terms and planetary governance. They would intercept transmissions about human fears and preparations for occupation. They would never suspect that the real preparations were happening in the darkness between planets. The first ships began construction within a week. Modular designs allowed for rapid assembly using components built on Earth and transported to the asteroid shipyards. Human engineers had learned efficiency from building cars and airplanes. They applied those same principles to spacecraft construction. Each vessel was designed to be deadly simple and absolutely reliable. Morrison watched the construction reports with growing confidence. The Council had made their biggest mistake in revealing their deadline. 30 galactic cycles was roughly 18 months in Earth time. That was enough time to build an armada that would shock the galaxy. Humans had conquered their own world through superior technology and tactics. They were about to prove that some lessons could be applied on a much larger scale. The secret spread carefully through governments and military organizations around the world. Scientists and factory workers joined the project without knowing the full scope of what they were building. Miners in space thought they were preparing for asteroid mining operations. Weapons manufacturers believed they were creating new defense systems for Earth orbit. Only a few hundred people knew they were building humanity's ticket to survival. As the weeks passed, Morrison realized that Earth was changing in ways the Council could never understand. The threat of extinction had united humanity like nothing in recorded history. Old enemies worked together toward a common goal. Brilliant minds focused their energy on a single purpose. For the first time in centuries, the entire human race was truly united against a common enemy. The message from the stars had been intended as an ultimatum that would bring quick surrender. Instead, it had become the catalyst for the greatest military buildup in the history of Earth. The Galactic Council was about to discover what happened when they threatened a species that had spent its entire existence fighting for survival. The emergency session of the Galactic Council on Nexus Prime descended into complete chaos as reports flooded in from across their vast territory. The impossible had happened in dozens of star systems simultaneously. Human fleets had appeared, without warning at every major council world, not as brutal conquerors seeking revenge, but as liberators offering something that had been forgotten for 3,000 years, the choice of freedom. Council member Vextar stared at the tactical display showing human ships in orbit around his home world of Kepler Prime. The alien vessels made no hostile moves toward the planetary defense stations. They simply broadcast the same message that was being heard on hundreds of worlds throughout Council space. The humans were offering every species what the Council had never provided: self-determination and the right to choose their own future. President Victoria Kane addressed the galaxy from the rebuilt United Nations headquarters in New York. Her speech was transmitted simultaneously to every inhabited world, using communication networks that human ships had established during their systematic liberation of Council territory. Her words carried the promise of a new era that would reshape interstellar civilization according to principles that honored the rights of all intelligent species. For 3,000 years, the Galactic Council has ruled through fear and oppression. Kane announced to an audience of billions across hundreds of worlds. They told you there was no alternative to their absolute authority. They convinced you that freedom was a luxury that primitive species could not afford. Today, we prove that they were completely wrong. The transformation had begun within hours of the Battle of Sol. Human ships equipped with faster-than-light drives that exceeded Council technology had scattered across the galaxy in a coordinated operation that demonstrated planning on an unprecedented scale. Each fleet carried liberation forces composed of multiple species that had volunteered to fight alongside Earth's military for the chance to free their home worlds from Council oppression. Admiral Jake Morrison coordinated the Galactic campaign from his new headquarters aboard the USS Independence, humanity's largest command ship. His screens showed the positions of human fleets throughout Council space and the status of liberation operations on over 400 worlds. The campaign was proceeding exactly according to plans that had been developed during months of secret coordination with resistance movements across the galaxy. Admiral, we are receiving surrender offers from Council garrison commanders on 67 worlds, reported his communications officer. Local populations are celebrating in the streets. Resistance movements are coming out of hiding to assist our forces. Morrison nodded with satisfaction. Human intelligence had been in contact with underground movements throughout Council space for over a year. The liberation fleets included representatives from dozens of species who had maintained secret resistance networks despite centuries of Council oppression. These allies provided local knowledge and popular support that turned potential invasions into welcomed liberations. Dr. Rachel Torres had been appointed as humanity's first ambassador to what would become the reformed Galactic Alliance. Her background in international law and human rights made her uniquely qualified to establish the legal framework for a new form of interstellar government. The charter she helped write would be based on principles that were revolutionary for galactic civilization: sovereign equality, mutual defense, and the fundamental right of every species to determine their own destiny. The old council demanded submission and offered only servitude in return. Torres explained during her first address to the Reformed Assembly. The new alliance offers partnership to those who choose to join and protection to those who prefer independence. Never again will any species face extinction for refusing to bow to external authority. The speed of the galactic transformation surprised even human planners who had anticipated rapid change once the liberation began. World after world chose to join the new alliance, rather than attempt independence in a galaxy that still contained Council loyalists and other potential threats. The voluntary nature of membership created enthusiasm that no amount of forced compliance could have achieved. Captain Ryan Davis found himself commanding not a secret construction facility, but a massive shipyard that was building vessels for dozens of different species. The asteroid belt facility that had produced humanity's original fleet was now constructing ships designed to meet the specific needs and preferences of Alliance members. Human engineering expertise was being shared freely with any species that requested technical assistance. The most remarkable aspect of the Galactic Revolution was its restraint. Human forces had the military capability to impose their will on every world they encountered, but they consistently chose cooperation over domination. Council members who surrendered peacefully were offered positions in the new government structure. Even former enemies were given the opportunity to participate in building a better future for all galactic civilizations. Colonel Lisa Grant managed the integration of former Council military forces into the Alliance defense structure. Her teams worked with alien officers to retrain entire fleets for defensive, rather than oppressive operations. The psychological adjustment was often difficult for personnel who had spent careers enforcing Council authority, but most adapted quickly to their new role as protectors rather than occupiers. Colonel, we have completed integration protocols for another 47 former Council vessels, her aide reported during the weekly status meeting. Their crews have adapted well to Alliance command structure. Most expressed genuine enthusiasm for defensive missions that protect civilian populations rather than threaten them. The few remaining Council loyalists retreated to remote systems near the galactic rim, where they established a small confederation that maintained the old governmental structure. Human policy toward these holdouts demonstrated the principles that governed Alliance behavior. Rather than hunting down the last Council supporters, humanity offered them the same choice given to every other group: peaceful coexistence or continued conflict. The former Council worlds were amazed to discover that humans actually meant what they said about voluntary participation. Species that chose independence were respected and protected. Those that joined the Alliance were treated as equal partners regardless of their technological capabilities or military strength. The concept of governance by consent, rather than force, was so foreign to galactic civilization that many worlds initially suspected deception. Trade relationships flourished under the new system, as species that had been forbidden to interact began exchanging goods and ideas freely. Human merchants found eager customers for Earth products among civilizations that had been restricted to Council-approved commerce for millennia. Cultural exchange programs brought artists, scientists, and philosophers together across species boundaries that had been carefully maintained by the old regime. Within one standard galactic year, over 400 species had joined the reformed Galactic Alliance. The organization operated from multiple centers rather than a single capital world to prevent the concentration of power that had characterized Council rule. Democratic principles that humans had refined through centuries of political evolution were adapted for use by species with completely different social structures and biological characteristics. The transformation was not without challenges. Some worlds struggled with the concept of self-governance after centuries of external control. Others found the transition from oppression to freedom overwhelming and required assistance to establish stable governments. Human advisors worked patiently with local leaders to develop systems that reflected each species' unique needs and cultural values. President Kane reflected on the changes during her final address to the Alliance Assembly before stepping down to make way for the first democratically elected galactic government. Her words summarized the achievement that had begun with Earth's refusal to submit to an impossible ultimatum and concluded with the establishment of a new form of interstellar civilization. 1 year ago, humanity faced extinction for refusing to surrender our freedom, Kane observed to the assembled representatives of hundreds of worlds. Today we celebrate the birth of a galaxy where no species will ever again face that choice. We have proven that cooperation is stronger than coercion, that voluntary association creates more lasting bonds than forced submission, and that the dream of freedom is universal among all intelligent life. The applause that followed her speech came from representatives of species that had been enemies under Council rule, but were now partners in building a better future. Earth had ignored the Council ultimatum, arrived with thousands of warships, and given the galaxy something it had never known: hope for a civilization based on justice rather than power. The new order would face many challenges, but it was founded on principles that honored the rights and dignity of all who chose to participate in the great experiment of galactic democracy.